All right, this is Jack Donovan, author of The Way of Men, and you're listening to Start the World. I'm here today with Josh Tyler. He is a professional MMA fighter, and he works on a project called Savage Gentleman, and you can find it at savagegentleman.com. I know Josh mostly through the internet, although we have met in person, and his Instagram is at Josh Tyler MMA. And he does not have a Twitter, which we were just talking about this in the pre-funk here, because Twitter's evil.
Actually, I do have one.
Oh, you do have
one?
Right.
No, I have one. I just don't do shit with it at all.
Ah, okay.
I started all of my social media stuff really for the sole purpose of helping to further my fighting career. When Facebook came a really long time, but then I saw, okay, man, there's a need for self-promotion in the fight game, right? I have to have some kind of a presence. And so then I started up, joined the Facebook cult, and subsequently got a Twitter handle and did a little bit with that. It just wasn't to my liking, so I just kind of left it there. And then Instagram just felt more comfortable to me, so I put a little bit more time and investment in that. And now I've kind of gotten to the point where I don't even care about Instagram. Like I've gotten so far in between posts because I don't know, man. I just don't feel like everything is worth noting to the world. Do you know what I mean? Like no one cares what I ate for lunch today.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much because I have the exact same problem right now. I've made like 3 posts in 3 weeks. And yeah, that's not really the correct way to do Instagram.
No,
but I definitely am at a point right now. I'm like, well, I don't know what to post exactly. Once I start rolling out episodes of this podcast, I think that's going to be the thing. And I'll probably do maybe a photo shoot that has kind of a similar aesthetic, and then I'll have some more images. But I'm fresh out of images, and you have to go, as we both know, you have to go out and do things because that's what people want to see. And I'm not doing it. I mean, I was sick for 2 weeks over Christmas. And the other thing is, I go to the gym and stuff, but you don't need to see that. That's, it's good for some people, but.
Yeah, but here's the thing also that I have found, the people that are actually busy doing real things, they don't fucking have time to pull out their phone and do a full-on photo shoot in the midst of doing the thing. It's like when I'm actually training for real, there's very little documentation of it because I'm too busy focused on training. So it's either I'm not really doing anything, and so there's nothing to take notice of, or I'm too busy doing the thing and I don't have time. And then every once in a while, I may have like this middle ground where, okay, it's not so serious that I can't take a moment to make sure the lighting's right and, do whatever to stage a cool photo. Because that's the other thing too, is it needs to have a certain level of quality or else people don't give a shit. Right. And it's Absolutely. Like, well, I could pull out my phone at any moment and snap a picture, but it's pretty underwhelming. And for me, just merely snapping a picture doesn't mean much if there isn't like some thoughtful post, narrative to go behind it, or maybe if it's something funny or clever. But I don't know if that comes and goes with me. Like sometimes I feel like I'm very witty and clever, and other times it's like I got nothing, so then I don't post anything.
I just figure I'm a philosopher, so I have to look like I'm thinking. Sometimes if I have a lot of pictures where I look like I'm thinking, and eventually then I can use them for when I'm thinking. Like
I'm always thinking. I thought a thought today. That's. No, that's brilliant. Like that. You just get a ton of thinking pictures, and then when the thought actually happens, you pair that. And truthfully, that is very much what I will do with my social media. Is we'll go out and we'll do something, and I'm pretty lucky to have some amazing photographers who also happen to be my friends, and we'll go do whatever, have these adventures. They'll snap a bunch of rad photos, and then as an idea surfaces, I'll find something to match that and express is usually the way it works. And every once in a while, I'll come across a photo that I don't know, seems kind of powerful and impactful. And then maybe I'll write to that image.
Yeah.
But usually it's the inverse. I'll have an idea and then I'll find something to go with it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I usually have a stock of backlog of pictures, and then I'll just go through it and, oh, this is the right one for this.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
kind of
So
thing.
it's a very weird thing though, like the whole notion of social media, and I get it. People want to consume, right? And there is a niche market for those who can produce, but it's its own separate medium, different than, producing art in another forum, if that makes sense. It's its own unique thing, and some people are really, really good at it, and they have really like made a great living doing that. Um, for me personally, like I just have a hard time dedicating but so much energy to something that just feels very superficial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very artistic when I'm in the mode of it.
Yep.
Like right now, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really, but like I do because I like taking. I mean, I've been taking pictures for a really long time, and
Yeah.
I was doing this on film, before I had an internet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is kind of what I like to do. So
Mm-hmm.
and play with images and so forth.
I,
But anyway, I guess we should talk about the Savage Gentleman stuff.
I suppose we should, maybe, since that's where we're here, and
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me
I
about the
know
new
her.
store. What's been going on?
Yeah, so we had it in our minds that retail was the direction that we ultimately wanted to go. Wanted to have a physical presence somewhere, and I'm sure you can appreciate the idea of having a space, right? The value of what that means, a location in the world where activities can transpire and you can have interactions, right?
Absolutely.
Obviously, you know that all too well with
Mhm.
Waldgang and everything up there.
Right.
So that was the impetus for standing this up, and it just so happened that the stars aligned that we found a really cool space in this old. It was actually a trolley station
Oh
back in
wow.
the early 1900s, and they had converted it into a mall. And so it's got original wrought iron, steel beams and everything, and cobblestone on the inside, and really, really cool space. A lot of unique shops, and they're looking to create something outside of like your regular consumer mall experience, right?
Right.
Where Because I mean, you can buy everything online. Like literally anything you want, go online, you can get it. There's actually no need to go to a store and buy things,
Yeah.
you know, unless you're offering something different that you can't get online. And that was why we wanted to have a physical space, because when we're talking about this idea of becoming, then we we need to be able to do that in person to some degree, right? You can only go carry that so far in a virtual setting.
Right.
Um, and so it's like, okay, well, let's find a space. And so we're starting off, and this is predominantly retail. We actually have leather manufacturing here.
Okay.
Here, I'm gonna turn this and give you a little, so you can see that window there. That wasn't there when we got here, nor was this lovely wooden wall. I put that up and knocked the hole out in the wall so you can see. So it's kind of like that old school. Um, you would go to the shop to get the thing done, and the guy was there in the back making. You go to the cobbler, right, and he's there making your shoes. And so you can see the process. You could be a part of the process, and then hopefully engage in some kind of a conversation, whether it's something trivial or maybe it's a little bit more meaningful. I don't know, but that's what we wanted to foster here. And then ultimately what we'd like to do is expand into this full on like one-stop shop badass space where you can do anything that one would consider savage and or gentlemanly, from axe throwing to a really nice well built out library, to a pool table, to a bar, to a sauna, to a gym. But we had to start somewhere, and so this is our humble beginnings in that realm.
Cool. Cool. No, that's really exciting. I mean, just the idea of I remember the first time I got my own tattoo shop, and
Oh,
just putting it
cool.
all together. I mean, it's such a cool project to imagine. This is what I want my space to look like when people walk in, and it's a really fun project. But So tell me a little bit more about Savage Gentleman and how it got started.
Well, so this idea of two very dissimilar things, right? I mean, they're opposing, savage and then gentleman. But I think that there is, I found that there's also a duality in masculinity, and that may be an oversimplification, especially for someone like you who's spent as much time delving into that. But the short of it being is like, man, we have a savage side that is important, and we also have this cultivated gentleman side, or rather cultured gentleman side, that is also important. It's our ability to interact in the day-to-day. The savage is our ability to handle things in more an extreme environment, in an emergency situation, right? To be complete, I think, and to achieve our best version of ourselves, we need to be tending to both sides of that. I started off as a professional fighter, which put me way over on the savage side, and did that for a number of years. And it wasn't until I started kind of actually editing video, I realized I needed something to fall back on once my fighting career would inevitably come to an end, and fell into a job editing video, doing like survival stuff and that sort of thing, which was really, really cool. But the artistic expression of editing video and then actually writing about the stuff, I found was really fulfilling. And I realized that I had spent so much time like destroying things and other people and their faces that I had neglected this opposite end of the spectrum of being a creator. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I was missing. Because there was certainly some dissonance, and I just didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until I realized that, like, yeah, when I was a kid, I loved doing artistic stuff. I like to sketch, I like to draw. I like music and that sort of thing, and I kind of put it on the shelf. And I realized that other guys probably have a similar experience in that they've pursued one end almost to the extreme at the detriment of the other. I think for most people, they explore the gentleman side too far, because nowadays that's what gets us ahead in life. Your education, your job, really getting good at all those things are going to give you a huge benefit. But there's this side of you, and somewhere in the back of your mind, that I think maybe calling out to go and get your hands dirty, exert yourself physically, to spend some time outdoors. And while it's not a necessity from a, worldly perspective, I think from a intrinsic side, that's really important. And I think we've lost touch of that.
Yeah, no, I think, I kind of went hard on Jung in my last speech that I gave at the 21 convention, because I think he's kind of the root of this idea that men need to explore their feminine side. And I'm like, well, babe, we actually don't know what it means to be a woman. So why are we saying that we have a feminine side?
Right.
But it's all framing, because it's not like that's a physical reality.
Sure.
Like, it's not like there's an angel and a devil on your shoulder, or a masculine and a feminine side. It's just a way of explaining reality. Right.
Yep.
But especially in the modern world, we're surrounded by the feminine side. We're surrounded by a very, very feminine world. And I think that a lot of men really need to get in touch with their masculine side, or just their masculine selves, really. And that's what they're missing that, because you have to go actually seek that out. As you said, we don't have to be in a position, most of us. I mean, there's some guys who are still raised on a farm, and or end up in the military right away after high school or something like that. But most guys, they never have to do anything, and so it's all a choice. And I was talking about this with Tanner too. Like it's all a choice, and that's something that I think, like you said, it's good. There's something nagging in the back of our head that we need to satisfy that itch.
Yeah, I mean, think about
part of us.
Yeah, I mean, think about how many guys that or you've heard from personally that are like, yeah, man, I checked all the boxes, I did all the thing, and then all of a sudden I looked around and I still was unhappy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I did everything that society has told me that I'm supposed to do, and yet I'm still lost, right? And I think that is because we haven't tapped into whatever the other side of the spectrum is. Again, you may be one of those guys that's just way the fuck on the savage side, right? And you spent all your life just dragging your knuckles and bashing skulls, and it's like, and you realize, like, man, things aren't going the way I want them. I want to start this business and I want to do these things, but everyone says I'm an asshole and they won't do business. Well, maybe it's because you're an asshole and you haven't learned how to like talk to people. Maybe you should spend some time on the gentleman's side. Maybe you should talk to Tanner and learn how to dress appropriately, because when you show up, you look like a fucking slob. No one's going to respect you and you're not going to get where you want to go, right? Not to say that how you...
Yeah, a lot of the guys that I've met who come through, like, you know, I never know how to say it the right way to not be a dork, but you know, like special forces or whatever, you know, the high end military guys, because they're not all that, you know, they're something, they have their own language to talk about whatever it is they do, but that is a problem that I think a lot of them run into, is that they come out and they've only done the smashing skulls thing, but that is a very very niche group of men.
I mean, that is a very small.
And I've had to talk to some of those guys, and you know, like I had one of those guys who was actually really interested in the feminine side and whatever, because he's never really encountered that, but it's so rare in modern society. But yeah, those guys, they need to learn how to interact. I mean, I've had a corporate job before where, you know, you have HR and you have a certain way that you're allowed to talk and so forth. And these guys are used to, you know, they just put someone in a headlock if they don't like what they're saying, you know, and that's just that's not in the handbook.
No, well,
you know?
And that was really hard for me to figure out and accept, because, you know, in the gym, your hierarchy is based upon your skill and ability, and a lot of it just your toughness. You know, you may not be able to beat another guy in the gym because maybe he's more experienced, or maybe he's in a higher weight class or whatever. But if you can hang in there, you'll earn respect just through sheer grit and toughness. As it turns out, in the regular world, no one gives a shit. Like, no one fucking cares that I could choke you out in under 30 seconds. That means fuck all when it comes to me trying to get this, you know, TPS report out in time or whatever the hell I need to do. Like, none of that matters. And that was a really hard pill for me to swallow. It's like, oh man, people don't respect how badass I am. They only care about how much money I can generate for this company. That's a weird concept. And, you know, and then I had a choice. I was like, well, I could either be really butthurt and, you know, piss and moan and call everybody pussies because, you know, I was tougher than them or whatever. Or I could say, okay, man, I need to learn how to play the game. I need to acquire the skills that make me more valuable in this setting, so that I can get to where I want to go and be treated with the respect that I want to be treated with. And I think, you know, people fail to recognize that. It's like, hey man, just because you're exceptional at playing the flute does not mean that, you know, the people at your accounting firm are going to give you a promotion. Like, you have to understand what you're working towards, you know what I mean? And where the value is. So the idea with Savage Gentleman is looking, okay, where are the gaps in my game, right? And where are the holes, and where can I fill those in based off of what I'm trying to accomplish, you know? And if you don't have a direct goal in mind, maybe just filling in the gaps in general, because for whatever reason, maybe you're not happy with where your life is, right?
Right.
And that's, you know, and not to say that I have any or all or any of the solutions, but it's like, hey man, if what you've been doing isn't working, maybe it's time to explore some other options, you know? Right. And that's what I like about Savage Gentleman, is it's broad and it's wide enough, and it's not so clearly defined that it's like, well, if you're not Jack Donovan, then you're a pussy and you're not part of the club. Sorry. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you're a very strong example of what a man could and should and probably ought to be, but it's not a one size fits all. Neither, you know, I wouldn't recommend that everyone try to be like me either. In fact, I would strongly advise against it. Because despite my fancy vest that I'm wearing here today, I'm a bit of a shit show. Which is true. Like yes, I've started this company, and yes, there are people who follow me on social media, but it's like, man, I'm just as lost as the rest of you fuckers. Like I really don't know much about anything. I just maybe have some different insights, and am willing to accept that I don't know everything, and maybe that's the part that stands out more so than others. I don't know.
No, I mean, that's important. That's humility. I mean, we're all just guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all just guys trying to figure stuff out. And like my job is mostly trying to figure stuff out. Like really, I mean, that's really what I mean. In a certain vein of thought is trying to figure that out. I mean, and I see the screen. I started writing the new book 2 days ago, and it's just me staring at the screen. And I know what I want to say, but how do I say this in an engaging way? And I maybe get like 4 or 5 sentences written the whole day, because there's a certain way it has to be framed. And does this logically make sense? And did it, like, I mean, so I have the energy, and that's my job, is to sit around and do that problem.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's interesting to hear you say that, though, because someone who, from the outside looking in, right, you read your work, you're like, fuck, man, this guy is such a good author, and he's, so sharp, and he really articulates this so well. And people don't see the process and realize, like, hey, man, you're just another dude doing his best to try and figure stuff out. You've just stuck with it long enough and had enough talent and perseverance to get to the point to actually throw successful books together. But when we look at people who are successful, we think that there's some secret sauce that they have, right? That there's just, I don't know, man, he just has some gift that no one else possesses because he's Jack Donovan. So I guess the rest of us are screwed. And it's like, well, yeah, there's some natural talent, but again, we're all just regular dudes at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, like, you didn't learn to fight the first day. Like
no, I was born with it. I didn't train a day in my life.
Right.
I just woke up and just had an innate ability to beat the shit out of people. So that's exactly how it happened.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, everything takes work. So
yeah.
But so let's see, Savage Gentleman. Oh yeah, that was pretty interesting. You were talking about something a minute ago. Oh no, I bet anyone watching this doesn't know that you've been on reality television.
Oh, they probably don't, because I feel like only 15 people watch that show.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's a thing.
It's a thing, and it was really cool. It unfortunately, I don't think it was marketed as well as it could have been.
Yeah.
And I think the name of it is very misleading. So the show is called The Ultimate Ninja Challenge.
Okay.
And when you hear that,
yeah,
what do you envision when I say that?
Well, I didn't actually even know that was what it was called, but I would assume that you throw down these things, and then like the cloud appears, and then you jump out of it, and then you climb up buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's where everyone's mind goes when you put the word ninja and challenge together. Right. You are envisioning something, people in masks, and maybe you're climbing walls and going over obstacles. This is not at all what the show was about. The show was actually about us following in the footsteps of traditional ninjas, in that they had one of the most the most important skills that they had to possess was actually survival. Which, if you think about, if you're conducting clandestine missions against, this warring faction over here, you didn't just get to hop in a little bird and get and just get infilled, right? You had to go through the woods for however many miles, for however many weeks to get there.
Right.
And you needed to be able to survive, because it was fucking feudal Japan, and it's not like today where you could just go into the, McDonald's and grab a snack. So they had to be really, really adept at surviving in the elements. That was like the fundamental skill. And then everything else was subsequent. The ninja had a saying that if you had to draw your sword, you already had failed your mission, essentially.
Right.
So there was nothing to do with throwing stars or anything else. It was all about survival. And then we had these little missions and tasks to accomplish that would have been similar to the things that the ninja would have had to carry out. So
Okay.
one of the missions, for example, was building a rope bridge that we had to traverse across this huge, like 100-foot gorge. And then another one was we had to build a raft and float it down the river because that's obviously a more expedient way to travel long distances and conserve energy. And so anyway, on Discovery Channel, they picked a bunch of random people. Some of us had some martial arts backgrounds. Some of us did not. But they threw us all together, and we showed up and ready, set, go. What the fuck are we doing here? Was kind of the thing. Like no one knew. They were super secret about what it was going to be like, other than there were going to be survival and ninjas. And just like, oh, okay, sure, sign me up, man. And so we ended up spending like 21 days just trying to not die and also complete these arbitrary tasks that were given to us via this very what's the word? I don't know. It was very ambiguous scroll. Like the directions were not clear at all. It would just have this like really mystic Mr. Miyagi type verse, and then that was it. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we're here until we, I don't know, till we don't. So we'd be in a location for like 3 or 4 days, not knowing how long we needed to be there or how long, like if we had actually completed the actual task. Like one of them, we got dropped off. We went on these little dinghies, the little rubber boats, right, out in the middle of the Vancouver Sound on a deserted island. And we get out and there's a scroll and it talks about how water is essential to life and that in order to survive, you must find water, but there's no natural source of fresh water on this rock. So use nature as your guide and your intuition, and you'll be able to survive this challenge. And you're looking at it and you're like, what in the fuck does that mean? Like, what does it mean? You know, so there was a lot of frustration because we never knew what was going on. And then we just had to be out there and try and find a way to source water for 4 days in the middle of this, you know, saltwater bay. And so, yeah, it was just 21 days of that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I've actually never heard the story of it before. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, you know, it is still on Discovery Channel. If you felt so inclined, you could go and watch it, and you know, you could bring the viewer count up to 16 people. What was really interesting to me about the whole thing was what subjecting yourself to that kind of environment can do for the introspective part, right? Like self-introspection or self-evaluation or whatever. Self-discovery probably is the best term. There's something about when you break down your mind and your body through physical effort and exertion, how that, to me, that's really the only time you can start to really tap into the spiritual side, right? And not to get too new wavy or hippy dippy or whatever, but if you go out and you live in the woods for 21 days living off the land, you're going to learn some shit about yourself. And when you come back, you realize like how much we take for granted in society. Like the fact that if I'm thirsty, I can walk 10 feet, turn a knob and get water immediately. Right. And when you realize how convenient things are as opposed to the way things used to be, it makes it easy to see why we've manufactured so many problems of shit that doesn't matter. Right. Like, if all I have to worry about is not dying, then I don't have time. You know, if I have to get my water, get my food, make a fire, stay warm, I don't have time to try and figure out like what bathroom I should be using, right? Like it doesn't matter. Nor do I have time to care what bathroom the person next to me is using. All I need is for that person to make sure they're getting enough firewood so we don't freeze to death tonight.
Right.
And so it's interesting the perspective that leads, where it's like, man, a lot of this stuff really starts to melt away when you realize the shit that actually matters, if that makes sense. And I think that level of suffering or enduring starts to put in perspective the things that really matter. So for me out there, the only thing I really gave a shit about, I didn't care about, what I was going to do with my fight career. I didn't give a shit what I was going to do about my business. The only thing I cared about was I want to spend time with my wife and my daughter, who, I'm missing like crazy. And it's like, I'm missing out on, a month of my daughter's life that I'll never get back when she's at a very young age. And it's like, man, I need to prioritize, because at a certain point she's going to be fully grown, and I'm going to look back and like, shit, where did that time go? So it really helped me, I guess, be a little bit more present and intentional, which was super valuable. And it also, again, I was at that moment, I was struggling with, well, do I pursue my fight career? Do I take that, or do I pursue this other, this entrepreneurial thing? Am I giving up on my dream by walking away from fighting, or, you know what I mean? And there was this real huge conflict that I was at this turning point in my life. And then going on the show kind of, again, put things in perspective. It's like, none of that matters. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, what matters is I'm doing what I need to do to, support my family and to be with them and, enjoy every moment that I can with them. That's what really matters. Everything else is kind of superfluous.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, that begs the question. I mean, do you think you're going to fight again or no?
I think that I will definitely compete again for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about jiu-jitsu is it's way less committal than a fight. Like I could literally just show up, or I pay my $50 entrance fee, and if I'm not feeling that good, it's like, whatever. There'll be another tournament, right?
Right.
In fighting, you don't have that luxury. You set the date, and come hell or high water, you have to show up on that date. And there's been plenty of fights that I've had to go into where, I was injured and I had to like fake my physical to get clearance, so that the fight would happen. There's a lot more pressure, which is fine, but more favorable, because it's like, okay, man, I can train, I can get ready, I don't have to just drop everything, right? And I can do this, and it can be a little bit more leisurely because I'm not pursuing it for my career, but I can scratch that itch that I think we as men all have, where we want to be competitive in some capacity.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to do something like that every so often.
Yeah,
I mean, that's, like I said, even personally, like if there's a certain part of me that would just be just do bodybuilding forever.
Mm-hmm.
But you need that feedback, I think, sometimes. I mean, because I could just go to the gym every day forever and have that be my thing, but it's a very solitary thing, and you're not getting really any feedback from other men, and you're not getting that kind of stress situation. Because if there's days. I mean, I said it when I came out to roll with you or whatever. I was like, I don't know what I'm walking into. I'm like a newbie, but even now, it's like the jiu-jitsu gyms I go to on a regular basis. Some days where you're just not feeling 100%, but it's always nice when you really don't have a choice, and you're there anyway, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and you always feel better for having done it.
I think so. As long as you can, swallow your pride a little bit. There's some guys that will never compete. They'll never put themselves out there. They'll sit on the sidelines because they actually don't want to know the truth. They can't, because they're incapable of their reality being fractured. And we see these guys because they're super fucking tough online. and you can tell who they are by the way they comment and the way they uphold a conversation. And and they'll be the guys that will never try and never do anything because they can't handle having their reality fractured. But for the rest of us who actually want to get better and challenge ourselves, I think that's super important. And I think that sometimes you do have to burn the boats in some. I think that's important, right? Where you show up and it's like, you know what, man, I don't really want to be here, but I don't have a choice, and I'm going to do the best with what I have. And if that means I'm going to get my ass kicked for the next hour, then so be it. I'm going to take my lumps like a man, and hopefully the next time I come back, I will be better, and that experience will be different. But I mean, yeah, I think that is being able to challenge ourselves in a way that we can't just easily, weasel our way out of, right? It's really easy to talk yourself out of going to the gym one day, or, maybe on the piece of paper it says you do 4 sets. I'm not feeling today, I just do 3, right? Oh, yeah. But when you've got a clock that's going for 5 minutes and there's a dude trying to beat the shit out of you or strangle you, I mean, it puts a little bit more urgency on, like, okay, I need to figure this out, and I need to give a real effort despite what I want to be doing. And I think that there's value in that. I think more people should probably participate that more regularly.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's spiritually better for you. It makes you a better man.
It
really does,
Going back to what you said, right? We have to do that willingly because there's no longer the necessity, right? That used to be everyday life, right? I used to have to go out in the field and work my ass off. And if I didn't, well, guess what? The rest of my family doesn't eat because the crop failed, and just because I wasn't feeling good that day, right? So that wasn't an option. And so when we look, we kind of have this, we romanticize that men were so much more badass back in the day. And they were, but that was only because necessity mandated that they were, right? I mean, humans by nature, we're going to do the bare minimum, right? Mm-hmm. That's like a survival trait, right? That it's like, whatever the baseline is, if that's all I need to get to, that's as far as I'm going to go. Well, now we're finding that if that's that mediocrity, right, that median level, if that's all we strive to achieve, we're left wanting, and there's something in our brains, it's like, fuck, this isn't right. So now I actually have more respect for the guys that go out and seek out challenges than the guys of old who they just had to. They didn't have a choice, right? They didn't go to the gym because they were working their ass off. Like, they didn't have time nor need to. But now we need that physical expression. So now the guy who works in IT, right, and sits in front of a desk, but then goes and is like a high level grappler or CrossFitter or marathon runner or Spartan race, whatever. Like, that guy to me is super impressive because he doesn't have to do any of that shit, but he recognizes the value in challenging oneself and is doing it anyway. And to me, that's really admirable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just, like I said, it makes your life better. It makes you a better person. It turns, I guess that's a Fight Club quote. It turns the volume down on some other things.
Absolutely.
A little bit, it's you start to see what matters. Maybe some of these people leaving comments on the internet need to go do something real, and then they won't be so mad about something that someone said.
Weird. How dare you? Yeah. Well, it gives you, to another Fight Club quote, it gives you the ability to let that which does not matter truly slide. Right. You know what I mean? And that's that's a really fucking good place to be, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It's like, if I don't, and we see this again, it's like, okay, there's something to be said of like a physical expression of aggression that seems to be inherent in men, right? Like, we need some kind of physical outlet, and depending on who you are, that may be something as mundane as, just going for a walk, or it may be something as extreme of you like ice climbing, these extreme pitches, right? Or getting punched in the face, or launching motorcycles in the air, or whatever it is, right? And there's varying degrees of that, but that it needs to come out somewhere, because I think, again, it lends that perspective to everything else, where it's like, I don't have to get pissed off because someone disagreed with me on the internet, because it doesn't fucking matter. Like, there's
Right.
no need for me to lose my mind, and waste all this energy, hours. I mean, think about how many hours people spend in the comment section trying to argue with a complete stranger who probably doesn't even care about the topic. They just enjoy fucking with other people, right?
Yeah.
They're just trolling them, right? And yet here you are, like, on this crusade for whatever you're trying to champion, whatever that subject is, to someone who is just really who just is bored and is sitting on their couch eating Cheetos with nothing better to do with their lives. And it's like, man, how productive is that? Like, no matter how strong you believe in your stance, it's like you're doing nothing to further that cause. You're actually being detrimental, because that energy could have been spent somewhere in the real world doing something of value.
Right. Well, people love drama. People love. I mean, I was thinking while we were talking, I've often thought that that's one of the major reasons that, like, young men especially like to drink to excess, is because you create a dramatic situation, because otherwise nothing happened. Like people are blackout drunk, crazy stuff happens, everybody has to deal with it, then there's a story, there's a narrative that happened. Otherwise we were just sitting around in the bar talking to each other,
just hanging out.
And
having to deal with our own existential crisis.
They're creating an existential crisis. I mean, the same thing. I mean, hard drugs are kind of the same way too. It's like, oh, we got to find a drug dealer, and we have to and then it's same thing with, like you said, the internet and arguing. It's a pastime, and drama's exciting. Drama. Well, I mean, that's why people watch TV. Most reality TV, really. I mean, it's I was in your forum the other day, and there was an argument that was happened, the League of Savage Gentlemen thing on Facebook, and there was an argument that happened, and maybe I was procrastinating about writing a little bit. I was writing, and then there's this juicy discussion that's going on, and then maybe I'll jump in a little bit and stir the pot, and that's what people are doing, though. I mean, they're sitting at their jobs and they're bored. That's why they're doing that.
Right. Well, I mean, not to sound too nihilistic, right? But people are looking for any kind of distraction to take them away of the fact that it's like, hey, man, no matter, nothing that I do matters. It's all pointless, and eventually one day I'm going to die, right? And I think people, and not to say that is the actual truth, but that is something that people have to come to terms with, is their own mortality, right? And most people don't want to think about that shit, and then so we will fill that void with literally anything. It doesn't fucking matter, and it can be the Real Housewives of fucking, I don't know, middle of nowhere Arkansas, or it can be a forum online, but anything to distract, or it can be what this sports team is doing, or whatever this celebrity is doing. We're constantly looking.
What the sports team did wrong.
Ooh, yes.
That's I live with someone who was really into sports, and that's our joke about because he watches the like all the ESPN talking shows, and it's every time I walk around, I'm like, I'm so angry about sports, and that's what they're doing all day long, is I'm so angry about sports. And can you believe that? And a lot of it's male gossip too. It's like, can you believe that he said this thing? He shouldn't act that way. I mean, he's been, the whole city of Toledo is behind him, and it's ridiculous fucking male drama.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying that I'm above, distractions or entertainment or anything like that. Right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think we need to sometimes question, okay, what is this void that I'm trying to fill? And is this particularly useful, right? Or is this purely entertainment? Because there's nothing wrong with that, right? Am I just doing this because I enjoy it? Am I just watching this game played by other highly skilled, way more athletic individuals than we'll ever be. Am I watching it to see them perform, amazing feats of human achievement? If so, awesome, more power to you. Or am I doing this because, again, I'm looking for some drama so that I can, either be really happy or really mad at the overall team performance as compared to the performance of another team who is a arbitrary rival, so that I have something to argue with my friends about on the internet, right? Because if that is the sole purpose, man, maybe it would be time to just go sit on a fucking mountain for a little bit and just think about some things. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Far be it from me, again, to try and solve anybody's problems. But if what you're doing is not working and you were generally unhappy, maybe it's time to look elsewhere for the solution. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Or if you're not, you could be spending that time, maybe not making yourself happy, but improving yourself or your life or the people around you or whatever. I mean, that's if you're just engaging in drama, that's not that productive. But
no,
actually, that jumps off to somewhere I wanted to go anyway. In the last speech I did, we've talked about a lot about men online and the arguing and so forth. And one thing that women do really, really well is they support each other online. Now their compliments maybe fake and backhanded, but there's a lot of like, that's amazing. And dudes don't want to do that because it's embarrassing and it's not real.
It's so gay. Bro.
Yeah,
if you tell another dude he's awesome, you're like, you're so gay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's dudes who do that, and they're called dick riders, and they just do nothing but like, oh my god, I'll never be that cool. Like, calm down. And then there's the other guys who just cannot spare a compliment.
Yeah,
and that's both are unproductive. And I think that men need to help promote each other and I think the more confident you are in yourself, the less a compliment costs.
Yeah, very true.
If you're confident, then you're like, yeah, that's a good job, man. Because it's no skin off my ass.
Right. Well, it's. I think men in particular, because we have this competitive drive, right? We often look at things as a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, if I elevate you, then that means that I have to go down to compensate, right? Or that it puts you in a superior position to where I'm at, and it's like that, which isn't true, right? But I think that's the impression.
I mean, if you're in the same room competing for the same spot, maybe that's true.
Maybe.
But 90% of the time in life, 99% of the time in life, that is not the case.
Right. Well, here's
in business, there's somebody down the street who does something similar. You're probably still going to both be okay, and you can kind of, you don't have to be like trying to do this spy versus spy, like sabotage each other's business.
Yeah.
Stuff,
Well, here's even in direct conflict, right? Something. Yeah. And now this is different than to say like if your life was on the line, right? But let's say even in a fist fight, right? Like. I never have begrudged my opponent for performing well. Right. I mean, truthfully, I want him to perform like dog shit because that'll make an easy night for me. However, if he has an amazing night and kicks my ass, it's like, you know what, man? Hats off to you. That's great. You know what I mean? Like good for you. This is something that I can learn from, and I'll come back and, if we fight again, I'll use this to my advantage. Or if I don't fight that guy, I'll use that lesson somewhere else. But it's never like I never have any ill wish against the guy that I'm competing against, other than like I want to do better than him. But that doesn't mean that he has to, that doesn't have to take away from him. And it's the same thing in business. It's like, man, there's plenty of pie to go around, right? Mm-hmm. Like I don't if Jack is getting more listeners to his podcast, that doesn't take away from people who might potentially listen to my podcast. You know what I mean? If Ryan Mickler and Order of Man are getting more traffic to their website and their store, that doesn't mean these things aren't mutually exclusive, right? So like if I'm, even if I'm not friends with you, I want people to do well. You know what I mean? Because why wouldn't I? Why, you know, unless you are like my fucking mortal enemy, right? Which I don't think that really exists. People want to talk about like, oh, I have these haters or whatever. It's like no one really cares that much. You don't have haters. You have people that maybe want to fuck with you and like maybe want to maybe they dislike you and want to find an opportunity to bring you down. But I can guarantee they're not thinking about you every second of every day and how to like ensure to ensure your demise. Like that,
Right.
that just isn't the way it works, right? So it is interesting because you see that a lot where guys, you know, are very reluctant to like say nice things to other dudes. It is an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in our segment, I mean, we're all kind of working to help men improve themselves, and so there's not really a necessity for, you know, that kind of cutthroat competition or whatever. You know, it's not. I mean, like you said, Ryan Mickler is a great example. Like, I mean, I post, that's a great post to him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's got super thoughtful stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like he'll come up with stuff, and it's like, yes, I 100% agree with that. And truth be told, you articulate it far better than I probably could have. And then there's other stuff that I look at that's like, I don't know if I agree with that. You know, and the way I think the world should work was like, even if you and I are friends, right? If you see me say something and do something out of line, like you should be able to call me on that. I think you should be able to compliment another guy when he does something right, and you should also be able to chastise them if they're way out of line. Do you know what I mean? Like that's, to me, that's what being a man really is having, you know, and having a real relationship with another man. It's not that, oh my gosh, I worship the ground that Jack walks on, which I do, but you know, everything he says is just the most profound, amazing thing. It's like, no, the guy is super sharp and he says a lot of good stuff, you know. But if you said something that I disagree with, I'd be like, you know, Jack, I'm not sure about that, and then we could have a dialogue, and you know, you could probably talk circles around me explaining that, and I'd be like, oh shit, man, that guy is thought way harder about this, and I'm not equipped to articulate this as well as he can, and maybe I don't win that argument, and I'm like, okay, cool, man. And then we just go about our day, and it's like, all right, well, maybe you don't see things my way, and that's okay. We could still be friends. We can still hang out and have a beer or whatever. We're not now mortal enemies because, you know, you said it was blue, but I thought it was green.
Right. Right. And I think the struggle is, and you know, if we were going to have that discussion, we'd have it in a sidebar, you know, like discussing, because we've talked before and we know we'd have it in a sidebar discussion. Right. I think a lot of people run into the struggle with this kind of thing because they want to have that discussion with you, and they think you should be willing to have it with all of the people.
All you know, 7 billion of them.
All of the people, and I'm not going to do that. You know, like that's been a long time. You know, it's like there are a few people that I'm like, if I respect you, and then, I'll explain that. You know, we talk that, but otherwise, I'm like, all right, books. If I made an argument, I made it best in a book. You know, like I probably can't make it that well in person. You know,
for sure.
So, you know, there's a lot of people. I don't really argue with people like that much, and I think that bugs people. They want to bend your ear and like explain this to me, and I'm like, well,
I'll show you.
I either did my best, or I don't know what I think about that yet.
That's the other part too, where it's like, well, I mean, obviously you're an author and a philosopher, and so you think on things, so therefore you should have an answer to everything that exists, and it's like, you know, man, honestly, like, believe it or not, I have other things that I have to do in my life, and I maybe haven't spent a ton of time researching this fact. And then they're outraged because this is their this is their baby, and really it's just their time to step into the limelight is what it boils down to.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I've spent a ton of time researching this.
Sir,
I feel really
sir, can I read?
yeah. Here's my
know,
15 minutes of fame.
It's the person who asked the question in class, you know, like right
Yeah.
there, like they want to tell, they're not asking a question.
They want to show off.
They want to talk.
They want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And you know what, man? Sometimes I would just pass the mic and be like, you know what? You have the floor, right? I don't always feel particularly obligated to then rebuttal, and a lot of times I'm just like, okay, cool, man, and then go about the day. And I wish more people had that capability online. So it's like, okay, we're talking about a subject. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, I felt compelled to interject on it, and I say my thing. And then this person comes back with a rebuttal, and maybe there's a couple of exchanges, but there comes to a point where we have to recognize, like, okay, this is no longer productive. We've hit an impasse here, and it's time to walk away. And people just seem to not have that ability, and it becomes this. Then it devolves into this name calling, or it just gets way off the rails. We're not even arguing the actual facts that even were predicated. The argument was predicated on, and it becomes this complete cluster fucking waste of time. And it's like, man, just stop. You're not getting anywhere. Just go about your day. And yet, there have been. We've had posts on our page where it's like 200 comments, or 2,000 comments, and 200 of them have been by one person. It's like, what are you doing with your life? Like, that you have this much time on your hands?
Yeah.
It baffles me, but I don't know what the what the original thing was, other than we should be able to have the ability to have discourse. If I think part of the point that you were making that I think we fail to recognize is that there's a different conversation to be had between you and I, who know each other, and we've had some serious and deep intellectual conversations, and then two complete strangers who have never met and know absolutely nothing about each other. And so we go into these discussions making this assumption that they know something about you and that you know something about them, and then you pick up the discussion and it goes, all to hell. And I think we need to recognize, like, you don't know the first thing about this person and what their bias is and where they're coming from. That needs to factor in the way you engage in this situation. And I feel like we seldom do.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the tricky thing. I think a lot of it maybe is, Americans are very democratic, and my opinion matters.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, your opinion kind of matter to me. Like I have to be selective in whose opinion matters, and I can't take equal criticism from everybody and have it and value it the same.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. You can't. People don't realize that. Like, there's no reason why I should believe that your opinion has value. If I don't know you and I don't know anything about you, like, you could be a complete piece of human garbage. And why would I take that seriously? I don't care. Like, unless you've proven to me that you have a valid, are someone who I respect. Then why does your opinion matter?
Right. And that's a great point. And we've talked about this quite a bit, where the messenger matters, where the person, who they are also, plays a part in how well I receive what they're saying. That's an important aspect. And I think we have this entitlement that, we're all so enlightened and woke because we have the internet, and we've, read a couple of articles, that now everyone is qualified to speak out on a particular subject, without any real experience other than this one, half-heartedly written article that was actually only created for the sole purpose of getting clicks and not actually for informing anyone about anything, right? But I read that article. Now I've got this shit in my back pocket, and now I'm going to beat everyone in the internet over the face with this little nugget that I found. And it's like, dude, no one fucking cares. Like, you know what? When you have accomplished some things in your life, and you're speaking to those things, well, then maybe we'll give you a listen, right? But otherwise, it's kind of like, man, say what you want, but don't expect anyone to give a shit, especially someone who's out actually doing things. Like,
Yeah.
someone may look at one of my fights and they may criticize how that played out, right?
Oh.
And it's like, okay, you can have that opinion, but unless
It
you're my
means a lot
coach,
more. Yeah, it means a lot more if it's another fighter.
yeah, if there's a guy that's like,
Yeah.
hey, man, you really, yeah, great, I think you should work on this, right? And you're just some fucking Yahoo that's never,
Yeah.
that's never trained a day in his life. Sorry, I'm probably not going to listen to that. I'm probably not even going to give that comment any recognition, right? Because why should I? Just like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, building off of all of this, who do you think is killing it right now? I mean, out in the world, I mean, we're watching the same things all the time. I mean, who do you think has a really good message right now, or who is kind of like popped into your view recently?
Man, there's a lot of people that are doing rad stuff, and the hard part is sometimes it's difficult to quantify. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Which essentially is saying it's hard to rank, right? It's hard. I mean, a lot of guys in our space are all doing amazing things.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that I could categorize it. I think somewhere close to home, who has been really impactful for me in what they've been doing is actually the guys over at Nonprofit and the Dissect podcast, and they're not necessarily in the man space,
doesn't matter
per se.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But they're a group of like really sharp, really accomplished individuals that, man, have a cool way of looking at things in a really awesome way of kind of challenging the status quo, especially when it comes to the fitness industry. That's kind of their wheelhouse, although they tend to diverge into quite of other realms, different realms and that sort of thing. But man, those guys are doing some really cool things, really unique, kind of going against the grain in a lot of ways, in pretty much in every way that you can do that when it comes to social media presence or running a business or running a gym or a podcast. Everything they're doing is very, counterculture, so to speak, which is really cool that they found a way to actually make that work, because it's super challenging, right? I mean, even with Savage Gentleman, to some degree, I try to buck the system a little bit and not buy into, too much of the consumer mentality, right? Because I think that is ultimately not a great thing. Right. However, there are certain practices in a consumer-based business that need to be followed in order to be successful. So with those guys with their model, man, it's really cool what they're doing and the depths that they're exploring, just on the human condition. I find really fascinating.
Interesting. So that's the Nonprofit guys. I think I'll try and throw a link into there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had we had a discussion with those guys, and in hindsight, I kind of wish we'd been able to spend more time with those guys, because I think there's a lot of stuff that back and forth would have been interesting to hear different perspectives on things. And I think definitely next time you're out this way, we'll have to link you guys up somewhere.
Oh, definitely. I'd definitely like to do it again. I mean, I was definitely tapped out the day we did it. What was it? We were in there for like 3 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm dumb now. All my smart is gone.
Brain no work.
Yeah.
Well, and we did kind of put you through the ringer. I mean, that was kind of a whirlwind of events to come in, and then you had the meetup, and then straight into the next day, climbing mountains, and then training and face punching, and then, hey, let's do a 3-hour podcast. And
oh yeah, no, it was great. It was great to meet those guys, and I still actually talk to them both.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, we send little messages back and forth on Instagram so every so often.
Nice.
And they'll like in a story that I did or whatever.
Uh-huh.
It's cool. I'm glad I'm still in touch with those guys, and I'll definitely be out your way. Which, by the way, I don't think we've mentioned is in Salt Lake City.
Yes, it is in
So
Salt Lake City,
your
Utah.
store that you're sitting in is
Hmm.
in Salt Lake City. So I think the people
Yep.
probably
And the location is Trolley Square, which is
okay.
because it was a trolley station. And we spent a lot of time beating up on social media for all its I don't know shortcomings and that sort of thing. But there is a lot of cool stuff that has come out of it. You know what I mean? Like it has given us the ability to connect with people that we otherwise would never connect with. It gives us insight into other people's lives that we may not experience. And I think that there is value in that. So, it
Oh,
kind of went off on a rant, but there
absolutely,
is
man. Absolutely. And I would never want it to come out across that way because I mean, I'm sitting here making content for social media.
right.
And that is my job, is being on social media, or part of it.
Hmm.
And I don't look at it as a negative thing. And in fact, I don't people get so down on everything about that world, and it's a tool, and you can use it or be used by it,
Mm.
and you can enjoy it. If you look at these things and all you see is garbage content, that's because you followed it. I mean,
Ooh.
I follow hashtag 19th century art on Instagram. That's what I'm looking at. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you can follow whatever you want. So if all you see is trash, then it's because you chose to see nothing but trash.
Well,
And
and that speaks to the drama thing that you had mentioned earlier. Like that probably means that you're a person who is craving, the drama, which means you're probably, I'll go out on a limb here and say you may be unfulfilled in some other aspect of your life. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Like, um, so I think there was a point that I was
yeah.
going to make about the idea of like social media. We talked about this before, and
Uh-huh.
I wanted to bring this up. I'll probably bring it up to the league at
Okay.
some point, but it was you who I think brought it up. This idea that social media should have been the ultimate like sandbox for
Yeah.
us to foster ideas and actually have dialogues and experiment and see, okay, what sticks and what doesn't. Um, and man, I want to believe that we can still utilize it in that capacity. We just have to be selective how and where we do it.
Yeah. Well, you create your own sphere.
Mm-hmm.
One might even say you start your own world.
Ah.
You create you can create your own environment within that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like I said, I can't hate on social media at this point. Everyone I know from the internet, except for my best friend Jesse, who I met at an actual job. But that beyond that, most of the people that I talk to, obviously you, other people I know through the internet, and like you said, it puts us all in contact with each other, and so you can find that space where you want to have that discussion. And I think that people are doing that more and more often.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of actually closed groups. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that like Order of Man, they have a
they have
closed
one. I
group.
think theirs is
There's a
called the
lot of
Iron Council, I
yeah, there's
believe.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
closed groups that are happening, and that's where you got guys who are actually invested.
Mm-hmm.
And then because there's an investment there, they they are going to have a more civil discussion, and they are going to have a more they're going to be more serious about what's going on, and more serious about making changes. And I think that even works with a lot of fitness things as well too. If you create that's kind of a thing in the fitness community, is people creating groups of like, we're going to do a group of people who like need to lose weight, and then
Mm-hmm.
there's like 20 people who are trying really hard to lose weight, running by the same guy, and they're in it together,
Yeah.
and they're having an experience together, and so that they're more serious and they're more invested in it. And I bet they're all pretty nice to each other instead of
Yeah.
the other things that people see.
Yep. Well, and I think this is something that has been brought up before, but I think that speaks to this idea of, you know, tribalism to some extent, right? Where there's a maximum capacity where if it gets too big, you start losing connection with the original thing that actually was the common bond, right? If it becomes
it's done
so
by
large,
like it's done by, like our brains can only process those kind of relationships with so many people.
Yeah, and I think with the internet, we started off where everything was like really tight knit and close, right? And then it expanded to incorporate everything and everyone.
Yes.
And now we're like, oh, that's bad, because things like 4chan and Reddit surface, right? And then okay, now let's tighten back up and let's form some more useful or productive spaces that we are in fact bought into, and from there that makes it more of a tool that we can extend into. Well, now we can meet up in person. Now we've developed a relationship with this small, tight-knit group of people, and hey, let's organize some kind of event together, or a meetup, or whatever that exchange is.
Right.
And now, man, now we can actually start to make things happen, and that's where I see, and hopefully the direction going with the internet and social media is used as a tool to create some positive change, as opposed to a place where people could just shit post and complain and piss and moan, and nothing actually is being done.
I think it'll always be both, unfortunately. But I mean, again,
I'm a hopeless romantic.
You can choose. You choose your own experience, right?
Right.
You choose your own level of involvement in this kind of thing. People can choose to be happy or unhappy. They can choose to invest in something and be excited about it, or they can bitch all day. And that's life. I mean, that's what people do. I mean, you can choose what kind of life you want to lead. But anyway, man, I think that's probably a good way to wrap up.
Yeah, I think so. I've really been digging the whole stay solder thing, just to kind of piggyback off of your statement there. I mean, I love that mentality, right? Where, oh man, we can choose, right? We can kind of be upset and hate everything and be shitty, or we can be solar. We can radiate energy and light, and go out in the world and produce and make things better as best as we see fit. And man, that's such a better mantra in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think it's the right message. I think it's what people need to hear right now. They need something
Awesome.
more positive and a more positive direction to go in. But cool, man. All right, well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Good luck with everything, and look forward to chatting soon.
All right, thanks. Thank you for watching or listening to Start the World. My personal mission is to help men become the best versions of themselves, and to face some of the challenges that we all face in the 21st century. It's getting weird out there. So I'm having conversations with other men who are helping men face and overcome these challenges. And that's why I'm so excited about the new season of Start the World. I have a lot of people scheduled. I'm going to talk to psychologists, therapists, martial artists, coaches, trainers, artists, spiritual leaders, and maybe just some fun weirdos. We're going to try to put out an episode every week for a while, maybe 30 to 50 episodes this year. I'm going to get some lavalier mics, maybe do some in-person interviews, and maybe even some workout content. I think a lot of people would actually like that. If you want to support this podcast or just my work generally, I'm writing a book this year that I'm also pretty excited about. Hopefully it'll come out in the fall. I'm using Subscribestar. Subscribestar is an anti-censorship platform. You can sign up using a link in the show notes, or on YouTube, or just by typing in subscribestar.com/Jack Donovan, and it should take you there. So thanks again for watching or listening to Start the World. This is Jack Donovan. Stay solar.